All right, thanks for coming, everybody. Maybe this will be a short and sweet evening. Just a few things to note. The street repaving is finishing up tomorrow, we hope, at least for the streets. We will be also having them repair some curbing that got, that was already pretty much destroyed. So they're going to fix that up, and we might actually have some other places that we're going to do some curbing.
This is asphalt curbing, right?
Asphalt curbing, yeah. So, whether that finishes all tomorrow or whether it'll extend a little bit, but the street part will be finished in its repaving tomorrow, so that's good news. And my apologies to all residents who were on those streets on Thursday and Friday being affected by the repaving. I know we went later than we anticipated. I didn't anticipate it. And there was lots of noise, but as one person said to me, it was a positive inconvenience. So I'll just sort of hang my hat on that one and stay focused on that. It was noisy and it went later than we wanted, but we did get something good out of it. I want to remind all council that we have a doodle poll out there for the council retreat, and if you haven't seen it, Town Manager Andrea has sent it out. I think it was last week. So,
do you know the dates offhand? Or do you know the dates offhand, or was it a pretty long list?
There's 3 or 4. It starts in July, it goes into August. It's Saturday morning.
Well, since Jane's not here, I guess, or is somebody else filling in for that one?
I am not filling in for the Arboretum and tree. Anybody else? But we
I
can
haven't
take
been
that
updated,
off.
yeah.
Thank you, Phil.
Okay.
Other than that strike, are you all in
good.
favor for that?
Looks good.
Okay, that's unanimous, aye. With proposed strike. And next is the approval of minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes?
I had no changes.
Thank you.
No,
Kind of
I
went
don't
back
have
and
any either.
forth on them, so they probably are pretty good fleshed out.
I had a slight comment. I didn't send it in. I just, on page 2 of the minutes, at the top of the page where we talk about developing a policy document for what we might consider for town funding. And I'm not sure that that's clear that what the communications committee and Dan are going to work on is a set of guidelines that we could use as a way of establishing when somebody is deserving or not. And I don't know that I have any changes here. I just was wondering whether that was clear in everybody's mind what we asked the communications committee to do.
So this isn't the communications committee?
No, this is reporting from the last meeting. It's at page 2, page 2. Where Mayor Kaki and Council discussed the development of a policy document that would use to establish process for town groups to make special funding requests.
Yes, that's Dan.
Yeah.
Councilmember Dan Simons took the lead to
Yeah, I understand.
develop that. It's not.
Are you
in-
comfortable with the way the wording is?
Yeah.
That it's a
Yeah, because I feel like it still leaves the door open if we were to conclude that we chose not to actually approve one, so I'm
Right.
comfortable with it.
Yeah, we still
Okay,
have to,
good.
we have to get a policy established first anyway, before we decide how to.
Yeah, the idea was to have a process where the
Yeah.
different requests could be reviewed. Maybe it's as simple as just
Yeah,
putting that clarifier in
Yeah.
their request,
Yeah.
but it just could be slightly updated in here to just say that that's what it's
Other
about.
than that, I had no other comments. I think
Well,
it was fine.
thank you. He'll get the policy drafted and then we can review and,
I think he's on the agenda for that, right?
yeah. So, okay. I think we're,
Kathy, I have one clarification to offer if I can.
yes.
On page 3, under the stormwater proposals and task force, the third and fourth line, it says the town now also has the as-built drawings of water, sewer, and stormwater infrastructure from the mid-1970s. And actually, what I got was all the water and sewer drawings that go back from the beginning when they started installing them, so they go back to like 1920s. And then you have stormwater drawings up until about the mid-1970s. Because after that, the drawings were done by the county. The only reason I mention it is we're talking stormwater management a lot lately. And so you can use those as a source for some storm drain piping in the office now, those drawings. Then you have to go to the county for some of the other stormwater, storm drain, stormwater drawings.
Yeah, thank you for that correction. You're correct, and that's a miswrite on our part, because I thought what we got was actually the drawings up to the mid-70s. I don't know that did we get something past the
No,
70s?
you got
We
even
did?
some recent ones.
Okay.
But most of the water and sewer was installed before that.
Sure.
There was a few like
Yeah.
the road in front of my house. So you should have all the water and sewer drawings from WSC, from all that they have.
Okay.
They actually have to send some other ones from the county.
Yes, they did.
But the more importantly, you only have storm drain up until the 1970s.
Okay.
And again, even with that, not that much was done since then.
So how would you correct that writing for us? Would you do
I would
that?
say the town now has as-built drawings of water and sewer,
Up.
drawings from WSSC.
Uh-huh.
And then they have the stormwater, storm drain piping drawings up until the mid-1970s. Storm drain piping drawings produced after that can be obtained from Montgomery County.
Okay, that wasn't exactly what was said in
Yeah, I
our
don't think
minutes,
it
so
is.
we aren't probably going to go quite that far, but the correction on the dating of these drawings is very relevant to an error that we made, so we'll fix that one. Thank you.
And referring specifically to the WSSC infrastructure.
It could be noted in the minutes from today that he noted that you could get the newer ones from the county. Was it county or WSSC?
Montgomery County.
From Montgomery County.
Thank you, Jack. Okay, with those changes, is everyone in favor of the minutes as they are with those changes?
Yes.
Yes.
Move that we approve.
Okay. All right, unanimous? Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda are presentations by residents. Do we have any?
I think so, thank you.
No presentations.
No.
Did you have something?
Yes, I do, yeah.
Yes, please use
All right.
you have to state your name and your house address. And then we try to keep it within 3 minutes, George, if that's possible.
What?
Yes, 3 minutes,
Oh, won't work, but I'll work at it.
please.
All right, you all observed on Strathmore,
Name, address.
name, address, and serial number?
This goes on a feed as well.
I gotcha, okay.
Audio tape, so we need.
George Martin, Jr., 4513 Oxford Street, right at the mouth of Shelley Court. My son resides about 4 houses away on Shelley Court. And that, on the first floor is my office there. But I'm a resident since 1962, so I find myself as the youngest and the oldest resident of Garrett Park. I mean, not many people were still around that were residents in 1962, excuse me, some exceptions, and a small group of us and a small group of us in the age group that I am now. In any case, Chuck was talking about stormwater management. This is an issue, stormwater management. It is not a big deal. Holy Cross and the problems I'm having with State Highway Administration is a big deal. Your deal is a small deal, and it's long overdue. I'll explain in a minute. Let me go over for a minute the history of my relationship with both Montgomery County, State Highway Administration, and Garrett Park as far as stormwater management is concerned. In the mid-1990s, the State Highway Administration authorized a study of Strathmore, from the town of Strathmore to Rockville Pike. And this is a big deal, big rehabilitation of Strathmore. And it didn't take place because the governor at that time killed the deal. Had the deal gone through, I wouldn't be here tonight talking also about Strathmore and this issue, probably. Then in 2002, also, State Highway Administration did another study of Strathmore, and again, did nothing about it. And that is somewhat related to town of Garrett Park, because in another session, Khaki, I'd like to make a presentation on encouraging the town to support Holy Cross and having the sidewalk built on Strathmore, as far as it'll go. I know it's going to be a problem to getting past St. Angela's Hall, but we're trying to at least get a sidewalk the whole length of Holy Cross and to the town of Garrett Park.
On the south side.
Excuse me, on the south side, of course, on the south side only. People don't realize, by the way, that other service road is also a state highway. It's not a county road, it's a state highway road. In any case, having had these studies and the stormwater water management, and as you know, the county's tightening up rules about stormwater management, and Montgomery County Schools was caught in this situation when they did the last iteration of the additions to Garrett Park Elementary School. And they had to put in a rather elaborate stormwater management retention system. And they asked for my assistance because I represented Holy Cross and a number of issues, particularly with State Highway. But in this case, I'm meeting with Montgomery County Public School architects all the time in connection with these different iterations of expansion of Garrett Park Elementary School. In any case, I was able to get for Montgomery County, going to the Archdiocese of Washington, who owns our property, Holy Cross property, and was able to acquire for the county an easement across the rear of our property for a stormwater line. It's about a 3-foot, it's not a small line. It's a substantial line that runs from the retention tank right next to the nursery school and runs down the back of Holy Cross School and into our inlet side, I'll call it inlet ditch, which is the left-hand side of Holy Cross driveway. So I acquired for them that easement. And lo and behold, when the project's completed, I said, what the devil is going on? I'm out there looking at the nursery school, I'm looking at the parking area in front, and there's no stormwater management for the parking lot, which is the newly acquired property of the town of Garrett Park and the nursery school. So I demanded to have a meeting with the architect of Montgomery County Schools. I met him out there and I said, what's going on here? And they said, well, it's easy. You know, Garrett Park acquired the nursery school, and we have no responsibility for the stormwater management of that paved area out there. Because as you look at the end, the terminus of Oxford Street coming to the school, you'll notice at the bottom, just before you approach the nursery school, there's a trench drain. And that takes care of the school's property, takes care of Oxford Street. So, but it obviously avoids any effort to control the stormwater management of the paved area in front of the nursery school. So in the weaning months of Chris Keller's last time he was mayor here, I asked to meet with him and went over the situation, and he said, I'll get my engineers and I'll look at it. And that was the last time I saw Chris or heard about a resolution of this stormwater management of this paved area. If you look at it, it's not only, it's bad enough that it's obviously avoided by Montgomery County in their design, but it also there's a spillway on the edge of it that it sends it to Holy Cross property. It doesn't try to run into a ditch or anything. It simply spills all the water into Holy Cross. And I mentioned to Chris, I said, you know, this isn't a real big deal. You know, once you build a big French drain. And would even let us use part of our property in order to just build a whole, a whole 6, 8, 10 feet wide by it's 8 feet, 10 feet long and 8 feet deep, just run your water into a stormwater management. And he said, yeah, it doesn't sound like a bad idea. Again, that was the last time I saw Chris, the last time I've had an opportunity to address this issue, and you wonder, well, after all these years, why I didn't do it. It's not a big deal, but inasmuch as we're in the last few months of resolving our stormwater runoff from the state at Strathmore, because they didn't maintain the ditches, Montgomery County, thanks to them, they put a couple of bus pads in the middle of our culvert line of the state highway. So everything that could possibly happen to force water off Strathmore onto our property has taken place.
Onto Holy Cross property, right?
Beg your pardon?
You said our property, you mean Holy Cross
Our property
property?
being Holy Cross.
Okay.
Let me digress. I was a 1959 graduate of Catholic University in Architecture, as Steve was, and as my son was. And next year, I'm married. That's 1960. The next year, 1961, the school was completed, and the school and the church were built by my father. So I came out of the School of Architecture, worked in the business, and turned out to be the assistant project manager on the building of Holy Cross School and Church. And lo and behold, next year, I acquire a property in Garrett Park, because my brother who lived in Garrett Park Estates told me about a couple lots being available on Oxford Street, and at the horrendous price of $5,000 a lot, we were able to acquire these 2 lots on Oxford Street. I'm getting close
We'll
to my...
get an oral history
I'm
from
getting
you
close
later.
to my 3
Thank you.
minutes. So is that right, Kaki? Any case, from then on, the rest is a lot of history that I don't want to go into now, but it's all very interesting to me and my family, but maybe not to you all. So, any case, here we are. I want you to consider using the same engineer that we are using and that you've used in the past. That stormwater management that was done for the nursery school, Burn Killy, that you see in this proposal.
That includes the rain
Burn
garden,
Killy.
right?
I'm sorry?
That includes the rain garden when you.
That's
talk
right. The
about-
rain garden and the runoff of the nursery school was designed by Burn Kelly. And it's quite a coincidence in running him down as a landscape architect that would assist me in my efforts to deal with the State Highway Administration. We happened to get the guy that had also designed the rain garden for the nursery school that you all had installed. The letter that you're looking at is actually addressed to myself and to the pastor of Holy Cross, but you'll see the part that's circled in the middle has a reference to the fact that he could do the work for Garrett Park in connection with the runoff of the paved area in front of the nursery school. I'm here to recommend that you consider using him because he seems very economical. It's a very simple task. And we'd like to get it done. Again, we've waited a long time, but then again, I should have been pressing this issue and have not bothered to, and want you to consider it as soon as you can. On another evening, I will be here, Kaki, if you will allow me, to talk about the sidewalk on Strathmore that I think is in the best interest, not only of the Holy Cross Parish, but as a resident of Garrett Park. We need desperately to get this sidewalk in, and the State Highway Administration, who has been fighting me for 7 years now, 7 years, even doing what they're doing right now, will probably fight me on having the sidewalk installed. And I don't know about the return of landscaping too, because we've lost 6 to 8 mature trees, and the state of Maryland has lost the like number of 30 and 36-inch sycamores along Strathmore. I mean, I don't know what more the state of Maryland can do besides that they haven't done to me and done to the Holy Cross already. I mean, they have fought me every minute on installing the stormwater system, and I expect that I'll have some resistance, and I'm going to be asking for your help on landscaping and sidewalks on Strathmore. Chuck?
George, I have a question. You made a comment about Montgomery County said that we now own the land. I thought Garrett Park just took over maintenance of the building, and I thought they still own the building.
No, we own it.
They own the land.
We own it.
No,
Yeah,
we own
the
land and building.
And the building.
right. And like I said, it was just a coincidence that Bird Kelly, that did the work for the town, was, accidentally, we got him not knowing that he had done it. And
Well, does some of the water from the school run onto the nursery school property? Or is it
Other way.
controlled?
Other way around.
yeah.
The nursery school property the nursery school runoff goes on to the Holy Cross property.
Right, I got that, but does the Montgomery County School property stormwater run onto the nursery school?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
It's not just coming from the nursery school and it's a small parking lot, it's coming from the whole watershed of the parking area in front of the Garrett Park
But
Elementary
that's my
School.
question to George, it's not controlled, it just runs right onto the nursery school property?
Well, there's
No.
the dip.
Okay. The nursery school property, as far as the building itself, has been taking care of what Byrne Kelly did as far as a rain garden. What they failed to do was to deal with the hard surface runoff that's still part of the nursery school property. And that was something that the architect for the county school system, I had real problems with, because I'd been reviewing their plans up to that point and had not noted that they had taken away the controlled runoff of that paved area in front of the nursery school. In fact, to this day, Montgomery County Schools is probably still burning about the fact that the town of Garrett Park acquired the nursery school because they desperately need parking. And my son and I and Steve could quickly find out that the parking ratio for a school at Garrett Park Elementary School is off the charts. The only way that you would be allowed to build that school with a little bit of parking that they have is there somehow is a relationship between Montgomery County and Montgomery County Schools. Would you be surprised? I mean, that there's that relationship, and that suddenly they can get, half a dozen parking places where a normal private school building the same school would have a ratio you wouldn't believe.
So if we could do a pause here, just for clarification. What we're talking about is not the side of the nursery school where the rain garden is.
That's
We're
correct.
talking about near the front where the playground is,
That's correct.
where the parking lot for the Garrett Park Elementary School butts up against the few parking spaces next to the nursery.
Butts up the end of it, you could say, it would be the
And the
trench.
fence.
The trench drain, yeah.
Right, and there's a little cut-through path, if you will, lack of better words there, that go from the end of the end of the parking lot and the nursery school into the road and parking lot of Holy Cross.
No.
That's
Well,
what
yeah,
we're
it's
talking about.
basically.
That's where the
It's
water's
basically
going.
The old circle, remember where that
Right.
old hemlock is? Well, that whole paved area is run off to, right, the side road of Holy Cross.
Right there, right in the rear, right behind
Right.
the
But it-
Lewis
but it
Hall.
runs- But it runs off, are you concerned about the runoff going into the parking lot to the school, or the runoff?
All the
That's
above.
about
First of
2,000.
all, it's restored the grass where the spillway goes through the grass before it hits the driveway.
Right.
Yeah.
And the only thing we're asking you to do
French.
is contain your own stormwater runoff.
Yeah.
That's all we're asking. And it's a relatively minor issue. And even when Byrne Kelly looking at it, he's not going to make anything more of it than I did, other than the fact, I might point this out, Byrne Kelly sees a way of doing the rain garden and doing this within your property, that they don't have to use any of the Holy Cross properties in order to contain the runoff. I was prepared to let them come onto our property as well for a French drain, but Byrne Kelly seems he can do it and contain it within the nursery school property. Because there's a grass area right outside the paving between our fence line and
Right.
the paving.
So let me ask you, George, this was submitted on the 6th of June.
Just this past weekend, you
Right.
can see it's very
And
recent.
it's got a 30-day revocation on it, basically.
By the way, Kaki, in that regard, we've already signed off on it. We signed off on it this weekend.
Oh, so, okay.
But this
so-
has nothing to do with the town of Garrett Park, because,
Okay.
as he says there, he'll give you a separate proposal. So I will get in touch with Byrne and say, I met with you all. Send Garrett Park a proposal relative to the nursery school runoff. So it's as simple as that.
Okay.
Does he have a contractor or contractors that we could get an estimate for how much that drain
You
would
know,
cost? Or?
Steve, that's an interesting question. It turns out that Burton Kelly's a real hands-on guy. And apparently he can do the construction as well. So he could give you a design build for it. There would be no contractor involved. You'd be dealing with Burton Kelly and the name of his company as a principal. And we're really impressed with him. And my plans is to use him to help be an advocate for us with the State Highway Administration, Greenbelt, to go and find out what the plans are. When the pipe is laid on Strathmore, what are you going to do about the landscaping and the sidewalks? And that's where, I hate to make get on your parade, Khaki, but I'm really trying to encourage the town, Garrett Park, to join with Holy Cross and push the State Highway Administration into putting a sidewalk in. And at the very least, do not put your trees in where the sidewalk could be. That is, think ahead, State Highway Administration, for once, and then do some planning that would make some sense for the long term.
Well, I'm certainly in favor of lending my voice towards the effort of Holy Cross working some arrangement with State Highway to get the sidewalks in. I'm certainly, and any of us, if they want to as well.
Could I have the support of the council in that regard?
Well, as a matter of fact, at the time they were building the sidewalks, I begged them to continue the sidewalks to the logical conclusion, which is doing the main driveway.
Yeah, I was on a committee with Hans years ago with Dick, and we had a lot of these types of discussions then. But on the 202 study that they did, it shows the sidewalks in the study. It shows the sidewalks. And so you're not, we're not trying to educate, say how they show it in a study that they contracted for. It wasn't done by the state. I'm sure it was done by a private engineering firm. And it shows it on the plan.
So I want to just kind of wrap this up.
Okay?
At this point, again, it's going back to where we can assist somehow with the stormwater runoff problems that we're part of creating. And maybe the remedy would be a French drain in that area. And working with Byrne Kelly to maybe assist in actually establishing that kind of.
I would ask Byrne in doing this to wrap, because you're going to be looking at it from a budgetary situation. Okay, if you're a design builder as well, give me a lump sum design build package for this solution. And like I say, I'm very impressed with his pricing. And the fact that he's a hands-on guy that can do it. Apparently, he physically did the work also at the nursery school. I think it was not just the designing, but he physically was.
So timing.
Pardon?
For the rain garden?
For the rain garden, yeah.
So timing is of the essence because this is you're trying to pair this up with the state highway, with work being done on Strathmore that Byrne Kelly's involved in.
Of course, this has nothing to do with that.
No, I know, but he's here.
But
Byrne Kelly is on
But I'm
site.
asking the council
Right.
that when Byrne Kelly and I meet with State Highway Administration, I'd like the support of the town of Garrett Park. As Hans said, I mean, he's encouraged them to put the sidewalks in.
Okay,
design them.
we're separate from the sidewalk. We're back here on the stormwater issue.
Okay, on that regard, Khaki,
Okay.
you're just waiting on, this week, you'll be getting from Byrne Kelly, because when I talk to him tomorrow,
Okay.
I say, Byrne, you mentioned it in a contract that you have with Holy Cross. They prepare your contract, in this case, the design build contract for the town of Garrett Park for the nursery school stormwater runoff solution.
Okay, I think, that is a good first step, and I certainly would support that, and I imagine council would support the initial effort to have Byrne Kelly propose something for us. You're all
Sure. I'm cool with that.
right?
Sure. Yeah.
So, thank you. That's what we'll do. We'll look forward to that later this week.
Good, good.
Okay.
I'll be back in future months.
I know you will. I know you will. All right, thank you very much, George. Okay, any other presentations by residents? All right, we're going to move on to action items. We have really one, it's about the appointment of members to existing town committees. One is Charlie Andrews. He's on Keswick, and he has stated his interest and passion for Arboretum and all things trees that he's been involved in. He's lived here for years. And so we do have 2 seats coming up now available on the Arboretum, and he has already presented his interest, and I think it's timely. We should not wait. So I'd like to propose appointing Charlie Andrews to the Arboretum Committee.
Let's do it.
Everybody in
Yep,
favor with
agreed.
that?
Agreed. I agree with Charlie as well. I'm going to run to the restroom.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. And second person is Charlie Snyder for the Archives Committee. He's a long-standing, ardent supporter of the archives, volunteer of the archives, knows it inside and out. And I think with keeping, the institutional knowledge and organization of the archives, it would still be a benefit to the town to have him on the committee. We have at least 3 other seats still open on the committee. We've lost a few, so this would still allow others to be to nominate themselves to come forward. I'd like to appoint Charlie Snyder to the Archives Committee.
Agreed.
All in favor? But where did Stephen?
That's what you were saying.
He gave you his pre-approval.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
When he said
Pre-approved.
that? I didn't know
That
who he
was
was talking.
his.
I thought he was talking
Yeah.
about, thank you, you all got it. Okay, all right.
Yes.
I have a concern.
Wait, so we are still in discussing, we're not
I would like to discuss.
voting yet then? Okay.
My concern is that quite a few of the members of the Arboretum Committee from 3 or 4 years ago left because of Charlie. I'm sorry, archives. And I think that needs to be considered, and I am very wary of the tensions that might be created if we do this.
So noted,
Among the
yes.
people who are on the Archives Committee and who have served on it. So I'm just, I don't know the details, I just know there was a lot of tension. I know at least 4 people who quit the archives because of that.
And you may recall that I was the liaison,
Yeah,
a
I know,
council
I know,
liaison
I know,
to
I know,
the
yeah.
Archives Committee.
Yeah.
And all those former members, they were not contending, it wasn't just a one-person thing. There were other issues happening at the time that dealt with council as well. And so people who decided to leave the Archives Committee were leaving more out of frustration in general. And I'm not going to go any further than that, except to say that those members serving now are all on board, and they also are supporting Charlie's request to be back on the Archives Committee, and with his great knowledge and ardent dedication.
And you've confirmed that directly
Yes, we
with
have.
those
Absolutely.
current committee members?
Absolutely, we have, yes, because we had heard the same thing, but we know it goes broader than just one person. So
Great.
now,
I think he'd be a great addition.
all in favor? Everybody in favor or abstain?
I will abstain.
Okay. 3 in
Right.
favor?
I'm in favor.
I'm in favor.
All right, so approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think there, just to make the comment, I don't necessarily want to repeat myself, but I just want to emphasize actually that, as I said, there are several seats still open on the Archives Committee. We'd love to get more members on there. There's so many neat things that can be done. It's not just archiving material, but the storytelling, the education. It would be great. And we also will have a seat available, if I'm right. I'll double check with Jane, but we do have a seat coming open on the Arboretum Committee as well, another one. So please send that message out. And council members, if you hear or know of anybody, please send the names forward. Okay. New business. On the agenda, the next item is new business. policy for town groups, requesting funding from the town. Councilmember Simons would like to add anything?
Sure, I want us to have, rather than me presenting anything now, I did a bit of homework on it, and Hans had shared some of his notes and from when we had the original, but I wanted just a bit more discussion. I thought it would be more efficient than if I came with a written, proposal here at this point, so, which I could certainly have for the next meeting, but I wanted to get the council, Kaki, and your view on, generally, I think there's two potential approaches. One is, do we want a policy that guides residents on how to, let's just say, apply for funding from a resident directly to the council? That's one approach. Set aside how we would approve that. And then a second approach is, do we want to say to residents, you can apply for funding, but you have to go through an established committee. And then committees would have a structure of how they would propose. And then following like either of those or with either of those, because I see that as kind of the two choices as approach, would we want to tie it to a calendar year so that it's budgetary? Or do we think that we would be so inclined to put in some discretionary dollars that we would have on an annual basis to each committee that we could then still have to sort of approve the specific deployment if that money were to go to a not yet approved grant request? So two things. Do we want these sort of proposals to come directly to us or to go through to a committee? And then do we think we want them do we want a grant open window that would align with our fiscal budget writing? Or do we want to pre-approve some funds? I'm open to feedback on any.
If I might start with
Certainly.
a quick impression. Fiscally, you actually do have two options. I mean, if the council would like to have a reserve placed for town group requests, special funding requests, and we could make that as a reserve, that can transfer across fiscal years. If you don't do it that way and you want to align it with current committees, you would definitely be restricted to within budget years.
Mm-hmm.
So just to put that out, great questions, and I'm interested to hear what the council has to say. Andrea, by all means, please join in if you like. Any impressions here, thoughts? Wait, we're doing council first, Jack, we'll get there.
Both. Excuse me. I think there should be a mechanism to allow people to apply to committees with regard to things that may may be covered by that committee. But in some cases, I think we may not have a committee necessarily for items that people may have interest in doing. So
Could we think about that? I mean, could we give an idea? I was trying to think myself, well, where would there be an exception for when a single resident might come forward and say, it'd be great to have some funding from the town for such and such. Anybody get some idea on that? And it's not, if you don't have it right now, it doesn't mean it's off the table. I'm just trying to really try to stretch here where that situation would arise.
was it last Monday was the 75th year of D-Day. What if somebody come and said, I think there's a World War II author in town, like what if they had said we want to have a historical session on something like that? Maybe they could request from archives. I mean, it's just thought of
So
an
that's
example.
gone through a meeting, a committee.
Yeah,
I'm talking about a single person coming forward.
but they could do it either way. It could be, which I think is what you were saying.
Right. Yeah, but we could always, I mean, if the policy
Well, let's
is-
say, for example, it's National Pride Week this
Yeah.
week.
Yeah,
Like
Or this
yesterday.
month,
Yeah.
depending
yeah,
on
because we
the
don't have a
timeframe.
committee on that.
And then
we
someone
have
said, I'd
diversity.
like to host a lecture and have a speaker, and I'd need some funding for a bit of catering, and I don't think there's a committee that would do that. I could go to the Citizens Association. So that's just an example of there isn't a direct committee. My hunch is we could push them, and by the way, I'm not advocating, I'm just, for the sake of discussion. My hunch is if we wanted to send it through committees, there's, the Citizens Association is a bit of a catch-all if we wanted to view it like this. Because if something didn't affect the community or wasn't for the citizenry, I'm thinking, what else? I want funding to put up bird houses, because I'm totally into birds. Maybe that goes to the Arboretum Committee, I don't know, do we have a birds committee?
Right, well, you might have a request from Girl Scouts in town who want to put together a butterfly garden.
Yeah.
Just saying, that's been,
Right.
I've been approached
Right,
for that, so, yeah, I get it, okay.
There's going to be spots where you're not going to have committees that you can easily put this into, so you either have to pigeonhole, force it into a committee, or you just have the option of saying if there's a committee available, that the individual could apply for whatever project that individual's interested in. So that's what I was thinking, both.
Yeah, that's why your thought is both. And then question with that, you think we would need to, would we be concerned, let's say we went that direction, both, if we don't care whether it goes through a committee, in my mind, if we're going to say both, we could just say, just bring it straight to us. We could do both, because otherwise, would we be in a position to say, well, this request seems like it should go through a committee, go back and talk to, X committee? Because then we'd need a policy to know how to respond to them.
Of course, if it went through a committee or a group, a town group, and there was already funding, or there had been funding set aside, whether we established line items or a reserve account, then we don't have to wait for a town council meeting. Because otherwise, I think you're proposing that we'd have to have a council meeting to decide on whether an individual would get funded for a certain request. But if it's such a way that they can actually fit in with a certain committee or group, and the committee or group already has the funding, it's up to the committee and group to decide. You don't have to come back and ask, and there's a whole timing issue there.
Sure, in that case, if we were to essentially fund committees, right, on an annual basis, then those committees could use those funds as they wanted.
Okay, and let's play it another way too. Let's say that because of there's been proposal here already about, having a reserve account established, which I do think is a good idea. How much deliberation is really needed if a resident comes forward, there's no fit for a committee or a group, and we do already have the money in a reserve account, then how do we decide? Is it done by an email? Is it just at the discretion of the town manager? Okay, so that's the next level of consideration. How do we do it?
See, the one thing, excuse me, that I'm concerned with is that there could be somebody coming up with some proposal that's unpalatable to the town, and we are, in the end, they want to have a gun show or something, whatever, but some unpalatable thing, whatever that might be. And they are government dollars, if you will, so, in a matter of speaking, the town would be backing whatever unpalatable proposal is, so I believe that it would be best that if it's not going to be approved by a committee, they'd be approved by probably the council, just unless there's certain things for some reason we want to do a blanket approval on, but.
So in that case, Phil, the council, there is a timing element. You'd have to wait for a council meeting, so
Sure.
it can't be like an immediate. There's no.
You could do it by email, I think, to
Unless
me.
there's consideration or deliberation, and it involves a policy.
Seems
Where I
way
was
too.
going with this, though, is there's no way, no problem with actually doing all of this, but you have like a triage policy. Start here, does it fit in with a request for the committee? Fiscally, do we have money set aside by individual committee for budget line items? Or do we want to have it in a reserve account? So you've got to start up structurally with the right financial accounting, as you mentioned, very good. And then you decide, okay, does this request fit in with a committee? Take it to that, and it's up to the committees. I think that's a no-brainer to me, but I don't mean to.
But you see, so.
And then the next one is.
But if it fits in with a
individual.
committee, and the committee says no,
Mm-hmm.
and the resident doesn't like that answer, does the resident then say, well, the committee wouldn't approve this, I'm going straight to the council? Fine, because otherwise we're in a decision, we're then saying like, no, you fit perfectly in with a committee. So to me, I think if we're allowing both, then we're saying, you can do either, you can do both. I think we don't want to get into defining that. like, if we're going to define that, I think we say committees only. And I hear Phil's point that you're
And
going to
no
have things.
appeal then, and no appeal.
That's right.
No
and
higher appeal.
And no appeal, which is essentially gets the council out of the business of making decisions of funding projects. That's what that does, in my
Well,
mind.
it relies on council liaison to existing committees. And so the committees have, you know, you're empowering committees, and you have the council liaison there as well.
I'd like to suggest we're talking about paying for this with taxpayers' money. I am really wary of having individuals come with us to a committee or to the town council to ask for something that they want individually. I think we need to think in terms of there's got to be enough traction in town for a proposal so that they could get at least 10, 15, 20 people to sign on to a document that makes their case. I am very strongly opposed to having this idea where we get into, and it'll become a monthly situation where somebody will come and, I have a great idea, support me. And I think we have a responsibility to be responsible for, fiscally responsible for spending taxpayers' money wisely, and not being perceived as a pot of gold that anybody can get into.
Those are good points, Hans, and I think that's
Yeah.
part of this, what this discussion is about. We are taking this seriously, so rightfully so.
It could be
And
a runaway train if
yeah,
2 or 3 people see, like, they had a party and then another
Right.
5, 4,
Right.
5, 6, 7 others
There's
want to
going
do
to
it.
be critical mass.
I think an idea of a petition for a single might be an idea, a good
Yeah, it
one.
makes
I mean,
good
if
sense.
you don't go, if you either go to a committee,
Go to a committee, if you
And
get,
if
if you get
there-
support
if
from
it
the
doesn't
committee,
fit
super.
there,
If you
and
want it
you-
with the town,
and
you have a
get-
full grant application.
well, be careful of the word grant application, because we're not trying to be overburdensome in the requirements that we want them to fill out. A grant
What-
application to me is like huge, multi-pages.
And-
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an application,
Yeah.
or.
Yeah, you can have a one-page
or a
grant
pet-
application.
And I like the idea Hans mentioned about a petition. You know, are there
Right.
other people
Sure,
who
get
are on
15
board?
signatures.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea,
Um,
yeah.
One thing I would say just off the top, we would not consider any politically motivated appeals. I think we just have to draw the line, it has to be non-political. Just, I don't want to be in the business of making political decisions.
Can it be apolitical? Meaning,
Oh, absolutely.
it's a,
Apolitical is
it's
fine with me.
Nonpartisan?
yes.
Nonpartisan,
like-
whichever we want. I don't want somebody to come with a political agenda, where that's, whatever it is. And I just think we have to be really careful where we walk with this.
I agree. I wonder if there's not a way to put a certain time frame for if there's a certain amount of funding that's available, maybe it's yearly or every other, or every 6 months or something like that. Like my grad school has a capstone program, and I get an email like every other day with them weighing all the different programs and trying to figure out which ones to approve, but they get a lot of applicants and then figure out which ones most align with what the school's needs are. Maybe it could be a similar thing with this, you know, maybe instead of the same 2 or 3 or 4 people might be coming saying, I want to do this event, maybe it opens up more to say, get a lot of people to say what they think is a good idea, and then be able to have either it's the committees or the council or both to weigh all those to find out which ones align the most with the, you know, the town's general
Stephen,
interest.
what about with that having what I would call sort of like an application window or a funding window, right? Which is
Yeah.
like January through May every year.
Yeah,
Because that also happens to align, you know, with that. And that way, again, in my mind, if someone's serious about it, well, I think we want to, in my mind, I like the idea of encouraging town activities, someone wants to do something. I also think you need enough of a hurdle that, like, not on a whim, not because you
Right.
can just sit in front of your keyboard and send an email, put a little thought, fill out an application, show that at least 10 other folks in town think this is a good idea, and you've got sort of 5 months of the year
yeah.
during which you can think about it and submit. What do you think of that?
I don't like the idea.
You don't
As the
like
mayor,
it?
responsible for the finances. And
You-
I don't know about Andrea, but I think
Sorry, you
that's.
don't like it?
I think it's process, you know, it's process intense, and I'd rather, I don't want to just be putting out an invitation, oh, we got extra funding, if you'd like to apply and you have a project in mind, here's the window. I don't want that kind of availability of funding. I think if it's really important, they'll find it out and they'll search to the right committees, they'll talk to council members. How do I do this? Of course, we'll have a policy written and published. But I don't want to be inviting, I mean, sort of to Hans's point, although he may disagree with this, we're not in the practice of a grantee giving, giving out money. That's not our job, so I don't want to do that.
Interesting, so
And also
I
when-
thought by me saying you put a time frame on it, it actually made it more difficult? You think that
And the
makes it
announcement,
easier?
and then we're gonna vet applications. I kind of like, I don't know if this is falling on the town office staff to do, but as all the critical priorities that we have, that would be way at the bottom of my list.
I guess I was envisioning it a little different. It might be something where, say there's $3,000 funding, and 20 different people come up with different ideas, or groups of people come up with different ideas that would be way more than that $3,000. But then if all those things are done in a one-pager, kind of what Dan was talking about, then either committees or us could just take a look through all those and see which ones everybody feels is the most applicable.
Okay.
Otherwise, I
And-
feel like it would just be somebody that talks to you and you
Well,
want to do it, and then
no,
they just do it.
Because it would still
So-
require all the other, pieces, elements that we've been talking about. And having been on many boards where there's financial requests, you're gonna get into metrics.
So Keki,
And how are you
what do
gonna
you like?
measure?
What do you like?
I like the idea of making sure you decide here whether you want a 10 or 15 or 20 person, thank you, George.
Thanks, George.
Petition to support an individual. I like the idea of first seeing if the individual's project fits within the objective or mission goal of existing committees, going there first. So I think that those are the avenues that.
And you're
we can
happy to
take.
entertain them all year round?
Well, it's a sort of a first come, first served. If we are going to have a certain amount of money set aside in the budget for the budget year, or we're going to decide for the year ahead what we want to do for a reserve account, this is what we got. So it's not just an open-ended amount, sort of Steve's point.
Yeah, it would have
We
a
do
cap.
have a set-aside amount, but we're not inviting. I think it's, just kind of seeing, I'm not,
Well, one thing you could do is put a stipulation on that you have to apply 90 days prior to needing the money, which,
so it can't be an urgent,
can't be-
immediate
right.
thing or idea that has popped up and like, oh, we want to do this, and we got 30 days to do it.
yeah, 30 days or 90 days or whatever days.
Chuck was asking. Chuck, did you want to speak? Okay.
There are two questions my name is Elizabeth Henley. That come to mind. One is, what is it that people need money for? So this is not an open-ended budget. I mean, committees can waive the fee for town hall, so if it's town hall, right? Could be payment for a speaker, but often speakers we've had in the past haven't asked for money when we've had these sorts of things. The Citizens Association or the Women's Club has been very good about, approving something and being a co-sponsor or a sponsor for an activity. So, I mean, it seems to me like we're talking in the abstract here, which I think is very difficult. So what are the categories? You don't have to decide this now, but what are the categories that one would want money for? And I do think like a one-page application process, possibly with 5 or 10 other people adding to it. I mean, it seems like it has to be structured, it has to be organized in some way that, and it doesn't have to be broadly advertised, but it could be that there are funds available for certain activities, like the butterfly thing, right? That's a Girl Scout, right? Who's interested in establishing that. That seems like something that would benefit the town. That could be a great project, but really, how much money is involved? I mean, we're not talking thousands of dollars, right? Maybe we're talking $200 or, so I think,
Those are good
And then,
points.
which brings up just, and so this is great, it's helping me. You can see why I wanted to have the conversation before I came with something written.
Yeah.
My other question is, are we sure we want to have something written? Sometimes, right, like, as I see it, I haven't been on the council very long, but the topic came up because we're responding to a request. If there hasn't been a request for the prior decade, and now we got a request that we then, it had some contention, we weren't sure, we ended up saying no, life went on. Before we write a policy and create a system for a once-a-decade request, we could just say, hey, you know what, moving on. And we'll deal with it off as a one-off and not have a policy. I'm happy to take on the homework. I just wanted to ask us, now that we've had some thought, if we're still confident that we want something in writing.
So we also know that there's been a request by the Citizens Association for the 4th of July. Now, it hasn't come formally to us, and 4th of July is upon us, it's coming upon us, so Andrea and I were even talking today, have we heard anything? We haven't heard anything. But we know it was
A thought.
a thought out there.
We did discuss it at the budget meeting, and then it was approved before all the other
But it was
discussion came
discussed
up.
without it coming to, as a formal request. It was a mention during a certain time.
It was, something that was requested to Dan and myself, so I don't know how much more formal it has to be. Like if somebody asks us and we bring it up in a public,
Okay.
budget meeting.
So I didn't realize that that was a formal request by you and Dan.
We both brought it.
I thought it was an idea, but
I
I
would-
didn't know you were
I
formally
would term
requesting
it as sort of,
that.
I thought then sort of got earmarked, like, there was some
Yeah.
funding in the budget for it, and we said, yeah, that seemed like a good idea and something we wanted to support. It's a town activity, benefits everybody.
Okay, so I thought we rolled it all into that other thing and.
It got rolled in later when it came to discussion about other committees,
Yeah,
what
so it
what
got
about other,
rolled in
yeah,
there.
then
Yeah, right.
it got kind of
But
hijacked
point
by
being,
that.
there's at least 2 times that there have been a request. Okay, so you're saying like,
But the one with the
like
citizens.
Phil,
version-
you used to like the idea of, it's worth putting in the effort to have something in writing
Sure.
for this? Okay.
Because it makes a filter, a way of going through and at least getting the information you want so people can make a decision without, if they come with a list of stuff they have to have in front of them, be it 10 signatures, whatever it is, plus an application filled out of whatever it is, then we've all got the same information to work with rather than somebody just showing up and say, hey, listen, I got this great idea, I'd like some money. And then we got to kind of go from scratch. I mean, it may never be used, but at least we've got something that will at least get some structure behind it, any, asking for money.
Okay.
And I think it's about the structure more than the being prescriptive, which is where I think you're trying to avoid, and I agree. You don't want to make it so prescriptive. It's arduous and, just getting some structure behind it. People ask, where do you go? How do we start this? Is
It doesn't need a lot of red tape, but it can't be like a
Right.
freewheeling
Exactly.
thing either. so.
right.
Right.
And the Citizen Association about the 4th of July, my understanding was that there used to be funding in years past, and for some reason it just stopped, and then they were asking to just recreate something that used to exist. So it wasn't.
I remember
wasn't,
that,
you know,
but
Okay.
We
This
could
is
ask the
great.
flute player.
I feel like it gives me what I need.
Oh, I'm sorry. Chuck, please
Sorry.
use the mic then.
Chuck Berry, Rokeby Avenue. I do think it would be helpful to have some structure to it. Instead of, right now, people come up to the council, they shotgun emails to you all. And I do think it'd be good to have an application, but then also let the person making a request develop it a little more. Think how much it's going to cost,
Oh, yeah.
a little bit of a scope of work, so you all aren't doing it. And to
Yeah.
take some of the workload off you all,
Right.
maybe have a council member to vet the applications, and maybe it should go to the committee, maybe it should be presented at a council meeting. I don't know that you necessarily have to have 15 people. One person could come up with a good idea. The other comment is, look at other towns and see what they're doing, how they get ideas. So those are just some thoughts.
Great, thank you. Good, I'm clear. Thank you for that.
Yeah, seems like a lot of good things to think about.
Yeah, good questions to kick this off. Thank you, Dan. Okay, if there's no other remarks about that, we'll go on to the town updates. And first on is me. with the SRTS project. I and Andrea are grateful and pleased to announce that we are moving forward, I believe, in the right direction with the right bidder, who at this point remains nameless. But we have been given the go-ahead to complete the package of the concurrence and award for submission to the State Highway. And I may get that package, I think, on Wednesday to review with Andrea, and then we'll send it on up to State, who has said, they could take 4 to 6 weeks, but, maybe it'll take less, we hope. We definitely hope. The lowest bidder withdrew, which is where we are now, and with the next lowest bidder. And that bidder had given us a timeline where they said that they could start July 1. So with that and whatever the justifications we have to put forward in the concurrence and award package and have that approved, and you'll recall there'll have to be some discussions with state and federal about funding. We did get that in some earlier discussions. It was back in April. Do you remember, Andrea? Was it April? My notes, I think it was April. So it's just more a reminder, a reminder to the state of what they said, that they committed to verbally. Anyway, so that's where we are. I'm very hopeful that we may get a notice to award, within 4 weeks. That's my hope.
So what is this package that you expect from SHA that wants to be filled out?
It's not from SHA, it's that what we have to submit to SHA, and it's a bid determination analysis
Okay.
and a bunch of other items that are, have to be checked off. But because the current lowest bidder that we're going to be recommending is within the percent range allowed without necessary justifications, it should be fairly lean and much easier to put together. If you recall, anything that was outside 10% above and anything outside 15% below, the engineer's expert opinion would have needed great justification. And we're not in that anymore. So.
Well, that's certainly good news.
Bravo.
So you'd have to not deal with trying to justify a case that shouldn't have to be made for what we perceive to be a somewhat irresponsible bid.
Yeah, and it's clearly been a lot of work so far, and I appreciate the diligence and the communication that we've had.
Thank you, and I want to also acknowledge everybody else here on the council and their input. It was, I think, the questions that really brought this decision to the fore from the lowest bidder. And we have it in writing. So, well done to everybody. Of course, we followed up with phone calls, made sure we had a clear understanding on both parties, and then got that in writing too, so we're good. I think that's all. We are not yet, we are holding off on actually making any award. Of course, we have to vet with you all, get your approval for the Safe Routes to School field inspector. But, we've had to kind of know where we're going with this construction part of the project before we could really go out and, but now we'll resume some discussion with the field inspector.
Is it likely that we'll be able to vote for that on that next meeting?
Oh,
July meeting?
absolutely.
Okay.
In fact,
We need to do it before that. don't we?
well,
Yeah.
no, I think we can do both. I mean, my hope is that maybe we'll actually have another award to approve, which is the construction award. But even if that isn't yet ready, we can still, I think at this point, well, we'll decide, because I got to we have to get a sense from State Highway. They have been sort of backing off of it, so they just want us to put forward the best defensible package on the bid selection that we're recommending. So, you know,
Well, for
we
what
got to
it's-
get a sense on this.
For what it's worth, I mean, if we're within a week of being able to do that, I would be willing to postpone the July meeting so that or to make sure that fits with when we have to make a decision so that we can move forward.
Or even have a special meeting if need be
Right,
to keep
whatever.
the train moving.
Exactly.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, I certainly don't want to
We should
commit
not.
to an award with the independent inspector if something happens on the other one. We definitely need to have that locked in. Don't you agree? Okay. If there's no other questions about that, we will move on to stormwater. A quick update for us, Hans. It's all been happening very quickly.
Well, actually, yeah. We had tried to schedule a stormwater meeting, a kickoff meeting, in April, and that didn't turn out to be very fortuitous because we didn't have a lot of the information that we needed from the engineering firm the town's engineering firm, for proposals for two different sites. One was for the lower Claremont Avenue outfall that essentially collects rainwater from the Montrose Claremont Basin, but also from Strathmore, and it dumps it into Porcupine. And the other one is the Lower Rokeby project, which we had a major problem with was it July or August of last year, when we had some major washouts of the path down there. And we tasked our engineer to work with the county to come up with a proposed plan for how to solve that problem, hopefully permanently. When I say hopefully, it's going to be hard to do, because we will need the county's help, both from a standpoint of the engineering support and hopefully financial, because a lot of the water that collects at Lower Rokeby collects there from the estates, which we have no control over. And
It's 30% of the water
Yeah,
from the
that's
county
the
side.
most recent estimate from the engineer, that 30% of the water that collects down there comes of the estates rather than coming from Garrett Park. And I think that's, well, whatever. So I've looked at the two proposals. I have some questions that I need to get clarity on from Clark Azar, and I will work with Andrea on that to make sure we get the questions answered that we have, and then arrange to have a meeting hopefully within the next 2 or 3 weeks to start the discussion.
Thank you, Hans. Actually, so I'd sent you an email back, and we are looking at Monday, June 20th, or Monday evening of June 20th, which is a week from, is that right? No, June 7th. It must be the 17th, although I thought he said the 20th. It's the 17th. Right, but we know the 24th doesn't work. We're at MML. So it was June 17th, a Monday evening, and July 1 of a Monday evening, just because we thought early evening would work best for most residents, and that being really the task force. So any questions you have, Hans, we are going to have, I know we have some residents who have questions and members of the task force, so we're just going to do it in that meeting to have the questions. But I would love to have your help and Chuck's, and if George is up to it, to pull the right as-built drawings, since none of them have relevant file titles. So we have to kind of find them. We have them, we just have to go through them and pick out the right ones. And I would love to have your help, and Chuck is very familiar with these drawings, and George has looked at some of these, so maybe we can do that this week, depending.
Okay,
That'd be great.
well, let me know what you.
But if
okay.
you could go out and ask, it was part of the email I sent you, if you could ask the task force members and the affected residents who, abut against the stormwater drainage problem areas, if they're available on those 2 evenings, that'd be great. Kind of want to just say that these are one of the 2 dates, and you got to just make it or you don't make it, Can't get everybody, but the task force is important. You definitely need them.
Well, it looks like if the estimates we've been given by our engineer are reasonably close, we're looking at something between the 2 projects, something on the order of $425,000, which says to me, we need the county's help.
I hear you.
So the county conceivably would help out with Strathmore since that's their right of way, and then some of that's
The
stormwater.
county doesn't have anything to do with Strathmore, it's the state.
State. I
No,
wonder
this
if
has
maybe
to
that
do
would
with the
work.
fact that, the watershed that includes Lower Rokeby includes all of the water coming off the Garrett Park Estates properties.
Actually,
which-
White Flint Park, but I guess
All
I'm
of
I'm mixing up jurisdictions, but I'm wondering if you were saying that the basin between Montrose and Claremont comes out across and goes to Porcupine Woods, but also Strathmore, culverts go
It's coming
in
down
there. Is
from-
that from the state?
One of the things that bothers me about their study that was done indicates that they didn't see a connection between Strathmore and the watershed. But in fact, I know that the State Highway Administration, at the time they rebuilt Strathmore, tied into the town's waters, into the storm
Something going
drains.
north, yeah.
It goes underneath Montrose and goes right through the backyards of Montrose/Claremont and comes out at the end of Claremont.
So I was wondering, is there a way to get them to participate if that's their right of way that's pushing water in?
Well, that's the goal.
Yeah, okay.
I mean,
I guess I'm only asking because we
I
asked.
don't think we can get SHA to agree to that, because this, I think they asked for permission to tie into our drains, and we said so unconditionally, yes. And I think subsequently, I think most people are upset that we weren't better at that.
And you all may recall that the stormwater outfall for the Safe Routes to School project is Porcupine Woods. And that part of the project is going to be taken up by the contractor who does the sidewalks. So
Okay.
that side
Yeah.
of Claremont, the Porcupine Wood side is
Yeah.
on another
It's a separate
track.
project, yeah.
That's a good point. That's SHA funding anyway, so,
Yeah.
well, federal, but.
Yes,
Chuck Berry, Rokeby Avenue again. Since we don't have an application yet for a request, and I've mentioned this a few times to people in the past, I think it'd be very helpful for the town to ask our lawyers, does the town have to pay for stormwater management at all, or should Montgomery County be paying for it? Because there's nothing in the town charter that says that we have to pay for it, a town charter with Montgomery County. It says we'll take care of the roads. We pay our taxes to Montgomery County, and those go towards stormwater management in Montgomery County. When I built a house here in town, and when other people's build a house or additions, you have to have a stormwater management contribution fee. We don't get anything back from the county. We get money back for trash, we get money back for trash collection. We don't get it for stormwater management. Nowhere did we ever say in the history of the town documents that I see, the water falls on the town right away. Maybe we're supposed to control that. It falls on individual property owners, just like everywhere else in Montgomery County. So Montgomery County might be responsible for most of the stormwater management here in town. They chipped in and fixed the storm drain pipe and the pathway across Rokeby. Why? I mean, just out of their goodness of their heart?
yes, it
They
will.
must, great, I mean,
They must feel
We're
obligated.
also
Sorry?
They
trying,
must feel obligated.
exactly, okay? And if we're getting into 400 and some thousand, and others wanted to do a large stormwater management study for town, a couple years ago, we had representatives from Park and Planning come in here and talk about a large study that was being done for the Anacostia watershed. And that was and I think they were gonna spend a lot of money just for the study. And that was gonna lead to other projects probably. So, I think, again, before we spend a lot of taxpayers' dollars on it, we ought to look at that. And I think it's probably a legal question we should look into.
Well,
That
just-
could be
just-
something the task force
Well,
could check into.
that's the tax duplication issue, which all the municipalities in Montgomery County have been fighting for the last, certainly 15 years, where they, like Tacoma Park and Rockville and Gaithersburg, provide police services, they provide road services, ride services, and all kinds of services to their residents, which they are already taxed for by the county. And the Montgomery County has been very reluctant to get into this game of reimbursing towns for that. And, you know, the municipalities of MML have been fighting this battle for at least 15 years now. I don't know that, so in the short term, I think the answer is no, they have no obligation. The question is, can municipalities collectively force that issue? And I don't know if there's an answer to that
Well,
question.
police services are a good example, so that we pay our taxes to Montgomery County, and the Montgomery County Police come out to our private property. So it rains on people's property, and then they're not helping take care of that, even though our taxes pay for that.
I'm just
I'm
saying,
familiar with what you're saying,
Yeah.
that they don't want to give back some of the money to the towns, but,
it's been on the agenda for MML
yeah.
in Annapolis for at least 15 years to try to get the county to cough up that money, and it hasn't worked yet.
Yes, it was recently discussed in a forum with a county executive a couple months ago, and other municipalities are asking the same question, not specifically, Chuck, about stormwater, but maybe I'll put out an email.
You
Yeah,
can certainly ask him.
we'll investigate.
Maybe ask them for proposal on how much it would cost.
That will also cost money.
Yeah, right. Which we would have to pay a duplicate tax on.
Okay. Let's see. Next on the agenda is communications. And Councilman
Yes,
Sanders.
so I have no update. I'm waiting for either a comprehensive update from the Communications Committee. I wasn't able to, on the dates that they had chosen for the meeting, I wasn't able to attend, so I don't know if the meeting occurred or didn't occur or moved. So once I have more to report, I will report back.
Okay, thank you. Town hall renovation planning, Stephen?
There's nothing different to report than the last month or two. I'm working on something towards the fall. On the preservation one, the one that's following that committee has taken a hiatus for the summer unless there's some pressing business, which has been their policy. So if there is a historic area work permit or something like that where it's necessary to have a meeting, they'll do it, but otherwise they're holding off until September. One thing that did come up, maybe I'll just make a general note about it, at the last meeting, there was a pretty lively discussion. I got there late from a baseball game, but there was some concern about, like, with towns that or properties that have a permit in town, like, is there any sort of a duration on those or any way of, like, checking those? Because there was one house that's out on north side of Kenilworth that's been stripped of its siding, its windows, and all the landscaping for, I think, over a year now, maybe almost two. Not quite a year. So I've got two or three different people have sent me pictures of it with two buzzards in top two windows.
Buzzards.
I have an inquiry into, just on Friday, I put in an inquiry into the code enforcement to ask for support, and I don't,
Okay.
I didn't do it as a complaint, I just did it as a request, just
That'd be great.
asking for what kind of things
Yeah.
would be needed to secure the property and
Yeah.
how would they recommend us moving forward,
Okay.
so
Yep.
I'll let you know.
This
next
particular
week.
one, that's great. And no, I think they do have some sort of a backstop on that. I know a commercial permit, there's a duration you have to finish something. I would assume there is for residential as well, but this one was a concern because it was an 1880s house and it's, really kind of prone to damage there, but it's not in the county historic district, so the town's kind of has their hands tied on it. So it was just a general thing that they were discussing that could happen again somewhere else. That's,
I was going to camp on that for a second and say there's also an open ditch, at least the last time I was there, and that's definitely a safety hazard, especially at night, and there ought to be something done about that.
Yeah, we also reached out to the current homeowners last week, town staff and I did, and we spoke with them and asked them to, at the very least, even if it's a temporary solution, that something needs to be done right now. The ditch is still open because there's WSSC
thought they finished.
work that needs to be done as of Thursday or Friday of last week. So whatever needed to be done hadn't been done yet, but we asked them to temporarily secure it in the meantime.
Helps that you keep pushing. I think last year the weeds were really getting out of hand in the town office, pushed them and they
Is there
cut
anything
it.
that we can consider in our own ordinance about putting, you know, a time limit?
That was kind of the wonder that was coming out of this discussion.
Isn't there a limit of a year on the permits, on building permits? It's 1 year, right? And then you got to go for renewal, because I remember with my house, when we did the renovation in my house, it ran long, and so we had to go for renewal on the thing, so that's what I was thinking, they got to be coming up on that year.
What's the repercussion though if it expires and you don't renew? Or you request a renewal, do we have any leverage to say, okay, you want to renew, what's it going, you know, what follows?
That was another question that came up is what can we do and can we really say no? Because it's not the town's property per se.
Yeah.
This is a complicated case.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So I just wanted to note that was just something that committee had on its mind and
Thank you, I've
Maybe
been
good
seeing
to-
pictures.
yeah.
I've had people ask me the same questions too.
Yeah, it's going on.
I would assume that there must be something in place, because otherwise they wouldn't put a limit of a year on the thing, so there has to be.
So we have a.
Code
idea.
enforcement.
I don't even know if they'd be aware of it.
We
This
mentioned your-
particular, these homeowners are aware. We've been in touch with them. Elizabeth has been in touch with them for probably the last month and a half maybe, and then we've been in more touch with them last week.
So when are they going to put the fencing around the ditch?
I emailed them, I think Friday, so.
And I had a phone conversation on Thursday, and said it needed to be done immediately. That the ditch needed to be covered with plywood at the very least, and that they needed to caution tape around the property.
They could put a silt fence around it so dogs from running into it.
So this is
too.
why I would call into code enforcement to get sort of the official word on
Yeah.
what should be done with all of this.
That's
That
good.
takes 5 business days, so hopefully
Yeah,
sometime this week.
that's good. Well, thanks to you and Elizabeth for pressing that.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on then to archives.
Well, as Andrew put at the bottom of her note, or her report, the Archives Committee has worked together with the town to hire a new archivist. And the new archivist, Claire McDonald's first day is Wednesday, June the 5th, or was Wednesday, June the 5th, I'm sorry. And she was selected out of 50 candidates. So that's good. We've got, get started on that again.
And I believe that was a unanimous decision
Yep.
by the committee and the interview panel on her selection. That's great. Thank you for doing that, for spearheading that.
And she'll be, I should add, she'll be working Tuesdays and Wednesdays all day, and then she will rotate between making herself available some mornings when there's volunteers, or some weeks being available on Saturdays so that residents might be able to stop by when they're picking up their mail.
Can you send out a town announcement about
Sure.
that? I assume you
Yeah.
probably already had it working. What was the name again?
It was Claire McDonald. It's on the bottom of report.
All right, thank you, Phil. Okay, next.
Traffic and parking, but I'm going to actually make a deferral to Mr. Chuck Berry, who was so nice as to come up with a great set of notes on signage to be put up in the Wells Park area. And we discussed a little bit of it this afternoon. I think for the most part, we're in agreement. Chuck, you came up with an updated version of this, which got sent out, but I don't have the printout of it right now. But I know we all talked about it, and I think, thanks.
It's my copy, but
I mean, basically, it's going to be to install some signage around Wells Park and clean up some other signage, so that what we've got is basically a new no parking around the curve in front, on the side of Wells Park, in front of Wells Park. And then there will also be some 3 signs put up on one on Rokeby, well, I guess really two on Rokeby, and one on Argyle, which will have, slow down park with a standard teeter-totter sign. And then there was going to be a sign, which, yeah, the same sign I just mentioned, except there will be one up on Rokeby. So basically, no matter which direction you come from, you're going to see a sign that says, slow down, park.
Children at play, right?
Yeah, children at play, I think is what it was.
He wanted to,
No, we changed it.
but we've already-
And there is going to be a relocation of a stop sign and a few no parking signs put up, as the committee had all agreed on. So, but I'll let Chuck if you got any other comments on that.
Yeah, also Dick Pratt had a lot of good comments. He's a transportation engineer. Bill, you had a good suggestion right at the entrance. We can stripe the pavement there.
Right.
So visually, idea is visually to get the graphic teeter-totter sign, as Dick Pratt called it, and clean up, cut back some of the branches. In other words, visuals so that drivers can see children in the area. But also, when we were doing this, it occurred to me how many other antiquated and dilapidated posts and signs there are. And so that's part of the comments there as well. And the main reason I came up here is to maybe we could encourage our residents to submit things in the town right-of-ways that are on the town property that they think are antiquated and rusted out or need to be replaced. I mean, some of the signs themselves are rusty themselves, so then we could get a to-do list together and clean up. But I mean, there was of the 9 items, I think 3 or 4 of them were just, a post with no sign or some antiquated signs around the park there, so.
Yep.
Thank you, Chuck, and thanks for
Thank you.
calling out to Dick Pratt. He did have a lot of input as well.
Phil, where are we with, are we going to do some no parking right here at the corner, at the traffic light? It's just bonkers.
You
with
mean along Oxford? Where?
Sorry, right
On
here.
Kenilworth?
Kenilworth?
Yeah. Like between landscaping trucks, maybe some homeowners, maybe some people who are dropping a kid off at the bus stop or waiting. Sorry, the far side.
Yeah.
Facing this way, far side on the left. My norths
Okay.
and souths aren't so good here. But I
stand off.
think we've all tolerated it for so long, but somehow it's worse than ever. And I think it's really dangerous. So
Yeah. Okay.
I don't, are we allowed to just paint the sidewalk yellow and put up a sign that says no parking, or is there some formal process for that?
There are no parking signs if you're heading towards Penn Place from here. Once you pass Strathmore, there's a no parking sign on the right. Coming the other
Yeah, but
way,
it's the-
there's not. Coming the other way, there's not. Going
I'm
out
talking
of
about
town,
kind of the,
going into town. Right,
People park very close to the corner,
yeah.
so as you're sitting there at the light,
you actually have to be, if you should be driving on the right side of the road, but you actually have to stop on the left side of the road, so that sometimes cars are just totally stopped
So at the
coming towards
intersection of
you.
Strathmore and.
I know exactly.
Yeah.
It's basically from where Todd Harris's house other side of the street, of
Yes.
course, but from where Todd Harris's house starts, all the way down to the corner.
Yeah.
And we get people parked in there, and then, because I've had to do it sometimes too, if I'm coming or going with my late hours to work, there'll be people parked there, and you gotta either wait for the other car to come through, or try and go around these guys. So yes, I know what you mean, and I don't see why we couldn't.
Brought that up to me as well, so.
And I can't
something to be
imagine
able to look
who
at.
would be opposed to it. I would think the people who live right there would be glad.
Yeah.
I would think, and they've got driveways too, so I mean,
So it's really
It's not-
Jeff, right at the corner.
Yeah.
And George Miller. Those are the 2 houses right
Yeah.
there.
One of the people who parks there is the crossing guard. She's there for about an hour in the morning, and then she's there again for about an hour in the afternoon, which is on the west side of the street.
Well, she's lovely and does an incredibly good job, but I'm sure we could just ask her to park a little bit further away, right? And
Or just move it further.
50 yards back.
Yeah.
and people park in front of her. Like I've seen
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
2 or 3 cars
Need a
in
sign?
front of her between where she parks and the.
okay, That's good to know.
As we're talking, I'm Eileen Kelly on Kenilworth Avenue. As we're talking about parking on Kenilworth Avenue, maybe the committee could also look at, I don't know, so as Kenilworth and Waverly as Waverly comes off of Kenilworth at that triangle, there's a yield sign if you're coming up from Penn Place on Waverly.
Yep.
Which many people I think don't see, and they pause as you're coming down Kenilworth. There's sort of a, no, you go, that's fine. Coming from Strathmore down Kenilworth, so the opposite direction, it's fairly unclear actually whose job it is to yield at that. People often actually miss that yield sign if they're coming up Waverly and are coming directly into Kenilworth traffic. And given that the street that continues is Kenilworth, it's just confusing. Well, it doesn't seem to work quite frequently.
Okay, we'll take a look at that.
Yeah,
today.
let me look at that.
Signage or
It is. Thanks
Oh,
for
no, you
bringing
know
that
what, sorry, the yield sign is on the Kenilworth side. That's what's
Yeah.
confusing. If you're coming down Kenilworth,
Right, yeah, it
you're
is.
supposed to yield to someone coming on from Waverly onto Kenilworth,
Right.
which seems backwards. If you're coming down Kenilworth, there's no yield sign for someone coming up Waverly. So then you're both there.
Okay.
But you come to a fork in the road and you take
Thanks, Eileen. We'll look into that.
Yeah.
Okay, where are we? Strathmore Hill, pedestrian warning light. Councilmember Wegner.
Okay, I had quite a few exchanges by email and phone with Derek Dunn, and actually, I shouldn't say exchanges. I sent emails or I sent phone messages and didn't get a response. So last Monday or Tuesday, I sent an email to him and I said, I really need your response. And I copied Jeff Waldstrasser's office. And that evening, Derek Dunn called me back and said, sorry it took so long.
Nice.
And, but he didn't have the information I wanted, which was dates for when the survey would be done for what the traffic volume, the foot traffic volume is at that intersection. So I said, please give me pick a date which is a heavy date of usage, not a, give me a peak, not a valley. And do that. And he said, well, we may have to do 2 of them. And I said, okay, how many you have to do, but do it soon and get this stuff done, get a decision made, otherwise I'll get to strike Walter's office and get them to help.
Thank you. Hans, is this looking at a survey right now or within a few weeks, once the pool really gets visited? I mean, when you want it at the peak
He's supposed to give me some dates.
Okay.
And I said, give me some dates that
All
would
right.
work, because he started talking about doing it in the afternoons, and I said, no, you gotta give it to me on a weekday, on a Saturday, when the pool is heavily used in the afternoon, or someplace like that, sometime like that. And he said, I'll get back to you, and I haven't heard back from him since, so, but at least he called me back.
Okay. Thank you. He's on notice. Great. Okay. Town Manager Fox.
Okay. Nothing too new other than what's in the report already. May revenues, operations, and capital budgets are at expected levels, and total revenues and expenses are within projections. I would add that there was a donation from the Mid-Century Modern House Tour to the archives. It's recognized in this report. That's the $1,765 that you would see in the revenues on line item 5.3.1, and in the operations as a transfer to operating reserves in line 21 or 21.1. There was a new building permit for 11309 Kenilworth Avenue to add a mudroom and covered porch to the side of the house. As far as town maintenance, it has been a busy month. So road repaving began last week. As Mayor Kaki mentioned, will hopefully end sometime very soon in the coming days. Let's see, a lot of town trees were removed beginning last week and will continue over the coming weeks. These are diseased or dead trees. This is part of the town's maintenance of the Arboretum. There will likely be some more pruning and elevating of trees that will occur. I asked for a quote today that would be along the July 4th parade route and what Chuck mentioned earlier, near Wells Park, elevating those trees so there's better better ability to see children, yep. The council meeting documents page of the town website was updated, so if you've looked for old minutes or agendas and weren't able to find them before, they should be there now with one exception. So we're nearly caught up for FY19. And then the last item was just the archives update, and Phil mentioned that, so that's it for me. If anybody has any questions.
I've got a question. Maybe I missed something somewhere, but I noticed that my neighbor has a variance sign in her front yard, and so I was just wondering, when do those things show up on your report, or how's that work?
At least 21 days prior to the council meeting at which their variance request will be addressed. But it can go up before that, but it has to be at least 21 days.
Right. But we didn't, excuse me, I didn't see anything from,
So my report lists the permits, but because the variances are action items, those are in the agenda. I can, do you know what I mean? So
Right,
it
no,
can be in both places, though. I can,
well, I'm just just as a heads up, what I was
Yeah.
thinking, because I had no idea until I saw the sign the other day
yeah,
that they were,
go ahead.
You'll get information related to that shortly. It's still in process. but
okay,
Family's going to be out of town for 2 weeks. Wanted to make sure about on the July agenda. They're in touch with George
Mhm.
and the Land Use Advisory Committee. So
Okay.
you should get something heads up so that you won't be addressed without knowing anything that's going on.
okay.
I haven't had a chance to look into it yet, so I'm assuming I got
For the variance
emails about it,
request?
yeah.
I think they're putting in a miniature golf course and an ice cream shop.
Sounds
Hmm.
like,
It's going to be great.
I think that should be very good.
yeah.
And the last comment is thank you very much to all those who worked on repaving my little corner of Cambria. I can't even get my own street right.
What's your name?
What's my name? Gee, I forgot that too. No, but thank you. I mean, the patch job looks great. Hopefully it'll last I know the other one up the street had lasted quite some time, so hopefully this one will last. So thank you.
You're welcome. We didn't want that car to sink into the road.
Oh, God, it was trying.
There were quite a few areas around town that got some necessary patching. So, thank you to Andrea and her crew for spotting them.
Just a quick town maintenance question. I'm wondering if, like the strips, I can't remember, heard them called different things, the strip between Strathmore and the sidewalk, if they can put like grass seed and some soil down, it's really looking pretty runoff, so it's getting a fair amount of erosion.
Where is that?
Well, down by my house, it's just about bald, and across the street, it's bald as well. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so between the curb and the sidewalk, a lot of the grass is just worn out. They'll probably still grow if they put it down now.
On the revenue, the taxes and fees, looks like we're up 112,000 through May. Is that like you were all set in, because we anticipated any additional revenues coming in, or is that something too much? We just have 1 month left.
We had, if I remember right, Khaki, we had a 90,000, this is the one we were talking about, right? We had a 90,000 increase in income tax from last month to this month, between April and May.
Yes, March and April. And then we're expecting one more in
Okay.
June. I think it's about 60.
In which category?
That's under local income. So local
Yeah,
income
yeah.
should go up to, I believe, about 466 right now. So we're sitting right now at 392.
Right.
We'll see another 60, well, my computations was 60, so that doesn't put you at 466, but that was the estimate from the state. So anyway, we know that's going up even more.
So we're going to finish in the year 150,000 plus over, okay.
It's already been spent. Okay, if there's no other questions, no discussions, meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.